The Middle Ages were an era filled with violence and conflict. But it's also an era that could be described as a melting pot of different cultures and religions. Some of the best instances of this is the Vikings, a rich culture that shaped a lot of the Middle Ages through their naval fleet and their invasion of England. They were both deeply impacted by their religion. Their belief in polytheism of gods affected how they lived and how they conquered. We are able to see this in their naval forces. Their religion was so deeply entwined with their culture that it was customary for Vikings before departing on naval journeys. They would often leave offerings for gods with specific purposes. For example, they would pray for strength and protection and success in battle by praying to Thor, the god of thunder, lightning, and strength. Or they would pray to the gods of love, fertility, and war, Freya, for bountiful marriages or success in war and war, and many more other ways.
Among the many things Vikings did, such as legends and myth, some of the lesser-known things, such as naval battles, were discarded and thought about as a group of Vikings sinking ships. The ship's design. The ship was built different from others because it used different techniques. For instance, the ship was made of sturdy wood so it could take on the vast oceans, yet small enough so that it could be used for simple fishing trips around islands, making it easier and faster to raid towns. What made these ships sturdy were, among other things, the cracks in the wood were filled with moss, vines, and animal hide. The sides lined with shields for quick cover from incoming arrows. Naval battles. While naval battles weren't big during the Middle Ages, many people still fell to ships' attacks. And though more people fell to land attacks than sea attacks, they still play a part in history. A major part of naval battles were the ship's design and readiness. Basically, Vikings would get up close to other ships in order to tie them together so they could jump over to the other ship and raid it. But they didn't only raid it, because after they were done pillaging, they would then take control of the ship because it held value.
Invasion of England. The Vikings' time in the British Isles was full of both conflict and change. At first, they were known for their violent raids and conquests. In the Viking colonization of England, in light of place names, states that the Vikings did not restrict themselves to attacking only Ireland, Man, and the islands off Scotland, but also found their way to easily accessible coasts of eastern England. These early invasions, mostly from the Danish colonies in Normandy, were motivated by the search for wealth, land, and resources. However, even the Vikings had a strong reputation. They ran into fierce Anglo-Saxon resistance, which stopped them from building lasting settlements in southeastern England at first. The end result of the invasion was the creation of Danelaw. Danelaw. The Danelaw was a big part of English history because it showed the point in history when Viking settlers took control of a big part of England and began to settle and diverse their culture with the Anglo-Saxons. Created in the late 9th century after the Treaty of Wedmore between King Alfred the Great and the Viking leader Guthrum, the Danelaw covered much of the northern and eastern England. This agreement recognized Viking rule in that area and introduced their own form of laws and practices. The Vikings built strong trade relationships, created towns like York, which they called Jorvik, and brought a new style of local government based on meetings called things. This made the Danelaw an economic and cultural center that connected England more closely to Scandinavia and the rest of Europe. Beyond politics and trade, the Danelaw had a major impact on English culture and language, and still do to this day. The Norse settlers brought their practices and language. With the combination of Anglo-Saxon and Norse practices helped shape what would become what we currently know about England. And even after the Danelaw was brought back into English kingdom, its legacy stayed in local laws, language, and culture. In many ways, the Danelaw showed what the Vikings were that the Vikings were not just invaders, but also settlers and even founders who helped shape and create practices that were used in medieval England.